Respected Reverend Dr. Davis Singh Yarden, Executive Director of Sahrdaya College Advanced Studies, Kottagam. National webinar. Distinguished Professor Dr. Lal C.A., Professor, Institute of English, University of Kerala, resource person of technical session today. Ms. Ruji Tomer, consultant, Cambridge University Press, the resource person of the second day. Dr. A. Linda, resource person of third day, and Associate Professor, Scott Christian College, Narcoil, Tamil Nadu. Dear Dr. Kail Joy, Vice Principal of the College, Professor Dr. Sanil Raj, Dean and Head of the Department of Postgraduate Department of English, Sahrdaya College. Dear Sheena Sara Winnie, former IQAC Coordinator, Department of English. Dear faculty members, students, dear Afrina and Begum Jahana, Association Secretary, and the ones who have introduced us. Dear faculty members from outside the college, as well as from outside the states, as well as students who are joined for this webinar from outside the college, as well as from other states and outside the college. So it is my privilege and pleasure to stand before you and deliver a few words of blessings and felicitations on the inauguration of the 3-day national webinar series on transforming pedagogy, scope and opportunities in ESL-ELT, organized by the Postgraduate Department of English, Sahrdaya College of Advanced Studies, in collaboration with Cambridge University Press and Assessment UK. Pedagogy describes the art and science of teaching students. It's the combination of teaching methods, learning activities, and learning assessments. It is a study of educational theory and practice, including how knowledge delivered and gained. Pedagogy plays the important role to teach and help teachers understand the best ways to conduct a classroom. It aims to improve the quality of education for students. There are different approaches to language pedagogy. Structural approach emphasizes the importance of grammar and structure. Functional approach focuses on teaching students how language functions for communication. Interactive approach highlights the social and cultural contact in which language occurs. Transformational teaching involves creating dynamic relationship between teachers, students, and a shared body of knowledge to promote student learning and personal growth. This 3-day webinar emphasizes pedagogies, scope and opportunity in English language teaching, and English as the second language. At the outset, let me express my happiness at the efforts of the PG Department of Commerce and Cambridge University Assessment English, Sahrdaya College, for conducting this 3-day webinar series and augment our quality endeavors in academics. The Sahrdaya College Advanced Studies, Kottagam, Thrissur District, has successfully completed the NAC first cycle accreditation with A grade and is going through the second cycle. I express the institution's gratitude to Professor Dr. Lal C.A., Professor, Institute of English, University of Kerala, the resource person of today's webinar, for his gracious acceptance, distinguished presence here today. My sincere thanks to all the other resource persons joined today for the seminar, as well as for tomorrow, as well as the day after tomorrow. I also appreciate the delegates and students, especially from other colleges and Sahrdaya College, for making it here online for the workshop. Best wishes to all. I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martipol Ukin, for your kind words and support. Ma'am, may I continue with the vote of thanks?
Sure.
To conclude, I invite Begum Jahana TS, second year BA English student, Department Associate Secretary and Webinar Series Student Coordinator to propose the vote of thanks. Over to you, Jahana.
Please excuse guests and dear participants. As I conclude the inauguration session of the National Webinar Series, I express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for making this event a success. I thank Reverend Dr. Father Davis Singh, Executive Director of Sahrdaya College of Advanced Studies, for your thought-provoking address and for gracing this occasion with your presence. I'm deeply grateful for the presence of our special guest, Dr. Lal C.A., Professor at Institute of English, University of Kerala. We look forward to benefiting from your expertise and insight. Next, I would like to express our gratitude to Dr. Makti Paul Ukan, Principal, Sahardaya College of Advanced Studies, for your kind words and unwavering support. I also thank Dr. Professor Sanil Raj, Dean and Head of English Department, for your warm welcome and insightful words. Our special thanks goes to Ms. Athena KR for setting the tone for this webinar series by introducing the program to all of us. I extend my gratitude to the participants. Thank you for your active participation and engagement. This webinar would not have been possible without the collective efforts of the Postgraduate Department of English, more especially the convener of the program, Ms. Sheena Sara Bini, Assistant Professor, Faculty Coordinator. And I extend my gratitude to each and every member of the team. Thank you all once again, and I wish you a very fruitful and enriching experience in this webinar series. Let's continue to learn and grow together. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna, for your kind words of gratitude. Now, to introduce our distinguished resource person for the session we all are waiting for, I invite Anagasi Zakaria, second year BA English student. Over to you, Anaga.
Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, you're audible.
Thank you, ma'am. It's my privilege to welcome Dr. Lal C.A. Dr. Lal C.A. is a professor at the Institute of English, University of Kerala. With 3 decades of teaching experience, he was formerly Director of the School of Distance Education, University of Kerala, a member of the Faculty of Arts of the university, and a member in boards of studies in a few autonomous colleges. He currently coordinates the KU Padashala project and the Tagore Niketan of the university. He is a research supervisor with several publications to his credit and is member in the editorial boards and advisory committees of a few journals. He is also an English language expert, trainer, and teacher educator, an alumnus of the International Visitor Leadership Program of the US State Department. He has been involved in academic engagements in several countries, including UK and Indonesia. He has presented thrice in the prestigious IETEFL conferences in UK. He was formerly master trainer in the Access English Micro Scholarship Program of Regional English Language Office of the US Embassy and involved in curriculum development and training in the Kerala State Literacy Mission and ESSA program of the Government of Kerala. He is a member of the Executive Committee of the English Language Teacher Association of India. Now, I respectfully invite Dr. Lal C.A. for the technical session of day 1 of the National Webinar Series.
Thank you, Anaka. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
And I will share my PPT. Give me a minute. I'm wondering.
Sure, sir.
I hope the PPT is visible. Has it appeared?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. So good evening to all. Thanks to Anaka for the good words of introduction. Though I couldn't see her face fully, only her nose and lips and lower part of the face was visible. So next time, Anaka, adjust your camera so that your lovely face is visible to everybody. Well, that was, I was trying to be very informal. So thank you, Dr. Sanil, for inviting me for this talk. And also I'm privileged to have the very first session of this piece. And but the topic I have given, I mean, the title I've given to my talk is Why Dogma ELT is Still Relevant in the Age of AI. And I will start with a picture here. This is a picture of a house next to mine. So if I walk out of my house, this is the building I would see in my neighborhood. And nobody lives there anymore. And it used to be occupied by a family who mean a lot to me, not only on personal, warm, cordial relationship basis, but also in terms of the English that I picked up over time. So that was also a family which had a lot of books. So I have particularly gone for the top floor, the first floor of the old building. Nobody lives there anymore, except for all kinds of civets and sundry cats and stuff, and animals like that. Human beings have stopped living there for many, many years. So in the inside Trivandrum. But anyway, I'm very happy every time I see the house because it was once occupied by many people who were very close to me. And the top floor had a few trunks, and one of the trunks held a set of encyclopedias. So that is why you can see the window. You can see a tile that is coming off near there's a window. Beyond that, there was a box. This was, say, 30 years more or more ago, 35, 36 years ago. And I used to go there with the permission of the people there, sit there, open the trunk, take out these encyclopedia volumes and go through them. So that was a world of knowledge for me, and that uh, you know, I thought I'll start with that, and that is early 1980s. So I'd like to make clear what I'm talking about. I'm largely talking about teaching English. I am talking about technology. I am also talking about not relying too much on technology. So, this is my encounter with the wide world outside in the form of an encyclopedia with color plates, etc., in the old house. And later on, in early 90s, when I began teaching in a college in Trivandrum, I happened to visit the deputy director of education, who happened to be the father of a friend of mine. He passed away a few years back. He was an excellent scholar. And whenever when I visited him a couple of times, I think it was in 1994, and then he would constantly talk very excitedly about multimedia. This is what he would say: a women's college is procuring multimedia, and women's college refers to the government women's college in Trivandrum. And he was, I had seen a computer. Personal computers were just coming in, but not very common. Offices were not computerized at that time. Very few people had computers at home. So I didn't quite understand what he meant by multimedia, but what he said had a big impression on me, saying women's college is procuring multimedia. So I later found out what he meant was a computer with speakers. You can imagine they're very basic kind of things compared to the gadgets we have today. The cheapest mobile phone will be 1,000 times more powerful than that multimedia that women's college purchased in the early 90s. in another 10 years, and I understood that this multimedia computer had inside it an encyclopedia. So a large, a huge information, a huge fund of information was locked in that multimedia computer. I never really saw that, but the description sir gave me was so lifelike and vivid. And in early 2000s, when I bought a computer, the first thing I got hold was a copy of Microsoft Encarta encyclopedia. And in the following year, I happened to witness a talk by Jimmy Wales, who founded Wikipedia. So that's my story with early encounters with technology and knowledge and learning. And until say 2010 or little after that or a little before that, we were using libraries a lot. So as people who belong to my generation or a little before that, we used to spend a lot of time in the libraries, physically spending time with books. So my idea is not to talk about the worth of really using books or vis-a-vis technology, but I'm just saying, describing that since over the last 1.5 decades, say 14 to 15 years, the study place has shifted from the library to any comfortable space where you have a laptop or even a tablet or a mobile phone with good connectivity. So that is where we are now. So from the fascination of books down to the time when technology has become so simple that you can access any information from any part of the world sitting at home, nothing new. So in early, in late 90s, in 2000s, we used to talk a lot about CALL, which was computer assisted language learning, which was again basically a multimedia computer with where we could listen to, maybe we could record a bit, etc. From that, we traveled dramatically to the present day, the very present moment, when just in a matter of a few months, ChatGPT has kind of taken over a lot of time and lot of saving a lot of time for people. Scholars are depending a lot on ChatGPT almost overnight. And you have in your Android phones, you have Gemini, which is the Google thing, and Copilot, Microsoft product, and ChatGPT is by Open Open AI. So the other day, my son, who certainly belongs to the next generation, he was seen talking to his computer. He was asking, not computer, his mobile phone. He was asking his mobile phone certain things. Mobile phone was giving him a response. And then he was saying that is not the information I want. What do you think about this, etc. I thought he was talking to some friend. But then he later on told me he was talking to the Gemini assistant in his Pixel phone. So you ask whatever question you want, and Gemini artificial intelligence enabled app will collect all that information, collate, and kind of talk you. You could have an intelligent conversation with this app. So that is where we are, the present moment. So technology, I was talking about broad arena of knowledge, whatever knowledge it may be, and coming precisely to language learning. Technology assisted language learning is something ubiquitous. It is here to stay. It's very convenient. And the last month, I was in Brighton in UK attending a big conference of English language teachers. And in that conference, the very first keynote and a series of talks, many plenary talks, were on artificial intelligence. So you have that. It's here and in a very big way. But I would say, as English language teachers, working in a country like India, in the southern part or eastern part or northern, whichever part of India, we know India's background. Though we are advancing in many ways, we still have this big divide between the haves and have-nots, and there are a very heavy percentage of institutions across the country which do not have access to technology in as big way as we would expect it. For that reason, and also for a few other reasons, I would talk about why we should not be carried away too much by technology, though technology is extremely convenient and we go on using it wisely. So, and please do not misunderstand me. I, as a teacher, as a student, as a scholar, have always relied a lot on technology. As I'm talking to you, I'm having an extra camera on top of my computer. I have an extra speaker on my side. I have a phone on my side. I'm largely technology driven. But when it comes to teaching English, I would say that we be cautious in relying on technology too much, and cautious in using the excuse of not having technology to be effective teachers, and not blaming technology for being effective students. So that is one point. And secondly, teaching and learning English, particularly in the basic level, and many of our undergraduates are basic learners. So I would say we apply the word basic level English learning even to college students. So, but I'm not talking about English major students, but others, general English students, and many people who are doing their PGs are still in a elementary level of English, particularly in speaking English. So we are all good at writing, perhaps we can understand English, but when it comes to speaking English and listening and understanding English, we have problems. Is there a problem? Everyone can hear me?
No. Yes, sir. That was an interruption. Cleared.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes. So, well, yeah, as I was saying, one thing, the advantage of being technology light is that we can save money on certain areas, which we can use on certain other areas. So, we widely use interactive boards, we widely use computers, we use projectors, which are excellent, which are useful, which are needed. But again, a word of caution, but I'm not going to dwell on this a lot because that is not a priority now. But I would say that these things are not that essential when it comes to teaching English. That's the only point I'm trying to make. So I'll just leave that. And this is a gentleman, Scott Thornbury, who impressed me a lot. I met him, not personally, I attended a workshop by Scott Thornbury in 2009, when he spoke he gave a plenary talk and it was not a plenary talk, it was a workshop Scott Thornbury conducted along with another gentleman named Luke Medding in the IATFL conference that I talked about. The IATFL conferences are conferences held in England, in some part of England, every year. It's a big event, and attending 4 days of the conference is like doing a course it's a kind of doing what shall we say, a refresher course in English language teaching. It's a wonderful opportunity for English language teachers. And for your information, IATFL conferences, next conference is happening in Scotland in 2005 April, and they have now called for scholarships. So English teachers, English researchers can go to their website and apply for scholarships to physically go and attend the conference. I am not paid by the IATFL for doing propaganda. I'm talking about this just because I found the conference useful, and this particular talk is based on certain things I have picked up during the conference. It's a purely accidental thing. I am not a brand ambassador of IATFL. I was just telling English teachers of possibilities. So in the conference in Wales in 2009, Scott Thornbury very vehemently talked about a new idea that he had. The idea is he called it teaching English unplugged, and he used this term dogme 95. It's pronounced dogma, though it's written dogme, and he called his project, not Dogma 95, he called it Dogma ELT. It has drawn, he was inspired by a group of Danish filmmakers who kind of launched a kind of movie making with minimal special effects. So they would have minimal effects. At that in 95 already there were a lot of dramatic additions, enhancements to movies which created spectacular films. But he was talking about being I mean, this bunch of people were talking about creating very minimalistic movies. Well, and this is their manifesto. They brought out a manifesto with many rules about how a movie can be taken with minimum effort, minimum props, minimum technological overlay. Dogma ELT is inspired by Dogma movie thing. This is a movement by a group of English teachers who challenge the over-reliance on material in language teaching. They found that in Europe, in America, ELT or English teaching was becoming a big business. Even today, it is so. This huge business with millions of dollars being spent on software, on books, material, etc., for teaching English, in textbooks, course books, etc. And he had this feeling that Thornbury at that time had a lot of experience teaching in other countries like Egypt, and he kind of felt that there is an over reliance on material in English language teaching, and he said that we have to bring back the focus on the teacher and the actual learners, and on a content that is relevant to them. So I was inspired by this talk, not because I kind of found the idea fanciful, but because I found 2 points in it which are very relevant to the Indian context. One is we cannot afford to have a lot of money spent on expensive electronic gadgets, but um, like the ones we have in our classes. The problem is there are ethical reasons for my resistance. There are also financial reasons and reasons about priority. Well, to put it very plainly, the all the technological gadgets we have today are heavily reliant on software, which become redundant very quickly. So you have a language lab with very expensive software in it. In a year, in 2 years, that software will be gone, and you'll have to spend again money on reloading or updating that software. And in 2 years, most of the computers will stop working. And this not only means a lot of expense, but also a lot of e-waste, which is not at all good for the sustainability of the planet. And even if we make allowance for that, very often these expensive gadgets need expensive maintenance and personnel, which very often the institutions are not able to afford. And therefore, most of the material we set up, except for a few projectors and a couple of smart boards, I'm very sure most teachers will agree with me. Most of our language labs, most of our expensive computer-based equipments are gathering dust because we don't have the right people to take care of them, maintain them, etc. So in the context of like ours, where we have resource limited situations, I think over reliance on technology could be a deleterious thing. Secondly, I think these days we are also finding it an excuse to move away from the real interaction in the class that should happen between the teachers and the learners, which will result in the learners being equipped with language, English language speaking, listening, writing, and reading skills in the optimum level. So that is one point I wanted to tell you. And what Thornbury found was that there was the teacher and the learner and materials in between, material or technology in between. So he felt that, on the other hand, it should be teachers and the learners who kind of interact, and materials could be the byproduct of that interaction. I'll explain how that is. So this is one of the basic precepts that he was arguing. Teaching should be done using only the resources that teachers and students bring to the classroom, that is themselves, and whatever happens to be in the classroom. Well, this is, remember, we are not going to follow it verbatim. Just as Dogma 95, the movie movement did not last long. People like extra effects, people like CG, etc. And such movies did not last for long. In the same way, if we religiously follow Dogma ELT, I don't believe that is something we are going to do. But I'm talking about Dogma ELT because there are certain things in Dogma ELT which would remind us of certain very basic things which we could do in the classroom, which would enhance our English language learning and teaching process. So the central point is that in the much depends on the teachers and the students and whatever happens in the interaction between them. The dynamics in the class when the teacher sets a task and students interact and what English happens is most important. That is a point that Thornbury makes in Dogma ELT and which I think is very, very important. So to continue to quote from the book, Teaching Unplugged, we are looking for ways of exploiting the learning opportunities offered by the raw material of the classroom. That is the language that emerges from the needs, interests, concerns, and desires of the people in the room. The idea is you have a teacher in the class, you have students in the class, and the teacher creates opportunities for the learners to talk in English, and language emerges when they talk about issues which are very close to their heart. And here, teachers might be a bit skeptical about will students talk about things. It depends heavily on how we teachers plan the class and set the tasks for them and get them involved in the process of discussion. So Dogma ELT is ultimately conversation driven. So you have the interaction in the class with minimal material. A course book may not be there, but certainly material will be there. For example, the teacher may bring in a cutting from a newspaper, photocopies of a cutting from a newspaper, a photograph, or a little account of something that happened in the student's own familiar environment, and the teacher sets a task in which students look at these pictures and starts having a discussion on it. If the task is well planned, discussions will evolve in the classroom. Not a student coming to the front and talking, but students at the simultaneously discussing or speaking in English about a topic in little groups, pairs, or twosomes of three people sitting together. They will be talking in pairs and groups. They will be discussing. So that means we have simultaneously we have all the students involved. So the teaching is conversation driven, material slide. You don't need expensive books or gadgets for this, and the teaching focuses on emergent language. So as language emerges in the class, teacher takes the class forward, bringing in remedial teaching, taking the conversation, taking English to the next level in the class. This is very, very difficult because this is something that puts a lot of strain on the teacher. But I think this is what is lacking in our English language classroom. The actual conversation that should happen in the classroom if our learners should start speaking English with confidence and with more accuracy and fluency. So there we have the Dogma ELT taking a vow of chastity of not using textbooks. Well, I am not saying that we should do that. We will use textbooks, we will use material, we will use technology, but we will not allow the textbook, the course book, the technological gadgets to rule us. We will not allow that to happen. We will have our own way of adapting it. So over time, this was in 2009 when I listened to this workshop. Things have changed. A lot of people have adapted Dogma in many ways. And interestingly, I happened to meet Thornbury again last month in the third IFL conference I attended, and we had a chat, and it was fruitful. And I wouldn't say he's very much talking about dogma, the ELT these days, but what he has done has had a very major impact on the field of ELT in the very simple way of getting people, getting teachers to focus more on discussions inside the classroom where language happens. So I would say this is, I'm not saying that in the present, we are going to have first year UG programs, 4-year UG programs in our colleges and universities. We won't have time. We are pressed for time to finish the syllabus. Students will be running from one class to the other, doing courses, choosing from the basket, etc. But my focus is not on a whole class being material light and driven by conversation, waiting for the emergent language. I am just saying that if the teachers could keep this in mind, they could make a difference by doing occasional changes. Maybe in a week's class, if you can do it for about 10 minutes in over 2 days, or 15 minutes over 2 days, when the students have a little conversation in little groups in the class, that itself would make a huge difference. So the idea of being materials light and technology light will give us the courage, the encouragement to do it. So, and particularly in the Indian context, dogma pedagogy, when we as a pedagogy, might help us to empower in our syllabus design, in our course book design. We can always focus on more time spent on teacher-student interaction and student-to-student interaction in the class. So, though there is a vow of chastity and stuff like that, vow of chastity means we will not use coursework. Well, we are not going to do that. We will use material, we will use coursework, but not exclusively. So we will, of course, have the examination in mind. Often, we teachers complain that we have to finish the portions, we have to cover the portions, we have to prepare students for examinations. And when do we have the time to have these kind of emergent language things in the class? But I would say, though the curriculum, the limitations are all there, our commitment as an English teacher is primarily to empower our learners to use language. And it is only when they talk in small groups will that happen. But yeah, we will prepare them for the exam, but we will bring in more conversation into our class. It is not one student coming to the front and talking. It is students talking to each other in little groups. We will bring in more activities into the class. And today the challenge has become between the competition is between technology and the teachers' ingenuity. As technology grows, as technology becomes sophisticated, it comes up with a lot of solutions, apparently it makes the job of the teacher easier. That is true. But one problem with us is that we teachers might lose our sharpness if we allow that to overtake us. We, as English teachers in particular, we need to be very much conscious about the pedagogic devices that will help us empower the students to use English better in the class. And if we don't do that, if we rely too much on technology, if we allow technology to rule us, and if we, because we find it convenient, if we allow technology to kind of take over, the problem is the classes won't be as effective as we plan. But I'm not talking about advanced level learning. I am talking about the um, the great need that we have today of preparing our young learners to use English comfortably in their academic activities, also when they want to go out and use English in their job and other contexts. And I'll conclude in 3 more slides, and I hope we will have questions and discussions after that. Today we talk about many methods for teaching English, and dogma is not a method, not at all. It's just a thought where we can rely more on the teacher's planning and the teacher and the student interaction in the class. It's just a thought like that. today we talk about many methods, and we have come to such a stand that there is this thought of going beyond methods and using an eclectic style of teaching in the class. And the eminent Professor Kumara Vadivelu talks about 3 P's in the English language class. Most of you will be familiar with this, I know. One is particularity, other is practicality, other is possibility. I would give a lot of importance to the first one, where the English teaching should be, when we teach English, we should be sensitive to a particular group of teachers, teaching a particular group of learners, pursuing a particular set of goals within a particular institutional context embedded in a particular socio-cultural milieu. The sentence looks confusing, but it is simply this: every classroom is different. So in your college, the host college, or the colleges in which the teachers in the who are listening teach, or the students who are listening learn, you have a different context. That's particular context, and the learning should be adapted to suit that particular context. That is what is meant here. So a method that works in an urban college may not work in a rural college. A method that works in a particular urban college may not work in another particular urban college. So the teachers have to adapt according to the particular socio-cultural needs of the learners they have in front of them. This is applicable to all learning, but particularly to English language learning. So that is particularity. I am talking about particularity, practicality, and possibility here because it seems to be closely related to what we have been talking before about dogma ELT, where we are relying on the ingenuity of the teacher, relying on the emergent language that comes out when the teacher interacts with the learners in the classroom. Secondly, you have this practicality, which is meant that a method should be applicable. So theories, you have so many theories. You have many theories of language teaching. You have task-based language teaching. You have content-based language teaching. You have English for specific purposes. You have a content language integrated learning. All these will be totally useless if that technique doesn't apply in a practical sense with the learners we are using them. That is another important practicality of the methodology we are using. And the third is possibility, and the method we use should be, these are all related, and the difference is slightly arbitrary. Method should be appropriate socially, culturally, and politically. Of this is the only thing I'd like to highlight. That is, teachers who approach to go to a classroom to teach students, they should be very conscious about the particular milieu from which the students come and the particular milieu in which the students interact in that particular college. And whatever topics could be generated in that particular context should be tapped so that the maximum language can be um, got out of that, got out through activities with that students. And you is the teacher. I'm considering that the primary listeners to this webinar are teachers. So these are the thoughts that I'd like to place before you. But I hope we'll have uh, another 15 minutes of discussions, which is more important rather than my talking just from a one-sided manner.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Mitty. Dear participants, the feedback link has been posted in the chat box and will be deactivated soon after the webinar concludes. Now we are moving into the interaction session. Ms. Mitty?
Can we have questions, comments, etc.?
So how would you like to have it directly from the participant? There, chat in the chat box, there is a question.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah,
Hello.
yes. I have. Can Dogme ELT be effectively implemented to address the learning needs of students with disorders? I think one particular aspect of Dogme ELT is to focus exactly on the needs of the learners. And if in your class you have students of special needs, I am sure Dogme will offer wider opportunities to do that. And another thing is, uh, we have two different classical ways of dealing with people with disability, taking them out of the context and putting them with their peers and then helping them. And secondly, uh, keeping them in the class and then taking care of them, which is supposed to be a better way of doing it, which is a more inclusive way of doing it. I certainly think that if teachers could spend more time, you don't need a FIP, AFDP program for this. I think English language teachers and all language teachers should spend a lot of time focusing on their primary commitment, which is to help our learners to use language in everyday context. So it's not just to learn academic material. Very often we confuse our job to be teaching literature. Certainly, that is one big commitment that we have. But it's also a commitment to help our learners to use language in context, and and addressing the learning difficulties is again part of our big commitment. So I know I haven't kind of fully addressed the issue, but I think certainly it students with students with disorders, again, is a wide range, and it is not a simple issue, as teachers know. How to build effective English inclusive classroom with advanced technology and equipment. Actually, that is the thought I wanted to generate in this, because the solutions are there, and solutions are bound to the particular milieu in which we work. And it is the more we think of that, solutions will evolve. And what works for me may not work for another person. What works with one particular batch of students may not work with another batch of students. Um, isn't it akin to communicative language approach that needs to be practiced? Yes, I think Dr.
Yeah.
Sri Darshan has asked a very pertinent question about the CLT approach. So I'm very happy you asked it. And as I was saying, there are a couple of people who I have always relied on for sharpening my skills as a practitioner of communicative language approach. And one is Scott Thornbury, and there is another gentleman named Jim Scrivener, and another person named uh, uh, Harmer. So all these people, and I'm not don't feel that I'm very colonially inclined. Talk a lot about English experts, but I am talking about these people because I have much exposure with them, and they are people who have worked a lot with non-English learners of English, and a lot of practical input have come in. And I am very much interested in the communicative language approach, and Dogma stresses on the communicative aspect of it. So your question is very, very relevant. It just highlights the need for student to student interaction, and the reduction of the teacher talk time and the increase in the students talk time.
Thank you, sir. There is another question up on the chat box. What do
Yeah,
you think about using Blueprint tool to learn pronunciation skills through AI?
I do not know the Blueprint tool, uh, so I can't comment on that. But I am sure that learning pronunciation is again another very an area of interest to me, and another very challenging area. And if AI tools help give you good samples as models for pronunciation, any tool is welcome. As I was saying that uh, we certainly should make use of technology, make use of all the materials that we have around us. It's not saying no, but just I'm trying to emphasize the need for the conversation in the classroom. That is important. And teachers cannot always give good models of pronunciation. And if this blueprint tool gives you a very good, viable way of giving students samples in pronunciation, it is very good.
Thank you, sir.
And
Another question out of the chat box. Yes, sir.
yes, teachers misuse this conversation interaction inside the classroom.
Yeah.
I do not know. It is possible of both the teachers and students having a bit of fun when there is this activity-based English classroom. But I think it is most often the administrative part where the heads of the department, the principals, who are worried that the teachers might misuse it. But I think a committed teacher will never misuse on the opportunity for conversation. Let me add to that. Uh, when a conversation driven English classroom is happening, a teacher who looks from outside might think that the students are having a lot of fun. There's nothing wrong in having fun. I think language learning should be fun, and that the teacher has nothing to do. Teacher is allowing students to talk. This is again an old notion that we have, that the teacher should be talking all the time. The students need to talk if they need to learn their English properly. And the task of the teacher is even more difficult. Talking for 45 minutes in a class is the easiest thing to do, though it's tiring. But setting a class where for 30 minutes students talk to each other is very difficult. And to do it effectively needs a lot of homework. And growing popularity, how can we inspire learners to work upon their English writing abilities? I can only say that students take our enthusiasm, our commitment, and our desire to do things are echoed on the students. So that is the only way to inspire students is by not telling them to be inspired, but showing that you are inspired, you are enthusiastic about the process of learning English and in delivering it. I think that is the only way you have. Other than that, there is no way, there are no shortcuts in enticing learners to do anything at all these days, because they have a lot of other options to engage themselves in. Do we have encouraging studies? That is a disappointing thing, even though we have been talking about CLT for a long time. I think as early as 90s and even late 80s itself, we have been talking about models where we have learner-centered activity-oriented classrooms. Serious research and serious work, whether they have been conducted, I am also a bit doubtful. So, but change is happening, and slowly classes are changing to the best of my knowledge. There is one question here, which is interesting. How can we make corrections in an effective way in an ELT classroom? Another very important point in relation to communicative language teaching, and also in relation to dogma ELT I was talking about. Mistakes or errors in the second language classroom is the most natural thing to happen. Traditionally, we used to think that a learner should always say only the correct sentences, should write only the correct sentences. Any mistake, any deviation is a big crime. And we would snub them, we would give them imposition, we would underline the mistakes with the red pen. But we need to keep in mind that in language learning, mistakes are as an essential part of the learning process. So I always feel that there are no real mistakes in the classroom. There are only attempts at correctness, which needs to be encouraged. So if there is persistent mistakes, certainly it's one of our tasks to give them good models to bring in corrections, etc. But we need to do that in a very subtle manner without hurting the confidence, the pride of the learners, because young learners are they're very sensitive very often. So if you particularly correct a mistake in the classroom, saying that that's not the way that word should be pronounced, it is like this, that student might not make an attempt next time. So rather than that, if you keep that in mind, that grammar error, that vocabulary issue, the word used in the place, or the pronunciation thing, and note it down and comment in a general way on a later occasion, maybe a few minutes after the mistake has been noted. If you can make that statement in the classroom in a general way, that'll help better than direct correction. Well, I hope that if I'm not sure if that is what asked. Well, the syllabus of MA is largely literature based. I am actually talking about uh, general English, uh, but very often even English literature students in our classes have serious problems with using English in everyday use. So even when we teach them literature, even when we teach them theory, if you could have small discussions about the top content they have to study using English, I think that will be helpful. So here it's not a question of the syllabus being revised. That is something I firmly want to assert. In English language teaching, no, even the best syllabus will not work until the teachers have this notion of what should be happening in the classroom, and the teacher unless the teacher has the commitment to put that test in the classroom and try it out. A good ELT books for the beginners, and that is if you look for ELT, uh, um, you type ELT with Thornbury, ELT with Jeremy Harmer, and ELT with Jim Scrivener. I will type out the names here. These three, particularly Harmer and Scrivener, have written two excellent books on ELT, beginners and ELT. With thing is, very often we have books with a lot of theory in them, constructivism, cognitivism, etc., which are theoretically explained. But we need books in which all these theories are kept behind. In the background, the theories are strong, but all kinds of practical things that can be done in the classroom needs to be there in the textbook for us non-specialists. We are not education specialists. All of us are not. There may be a few education teachers, but the teacher who has done an MA in English literature or a PhD in English literature wouldn't know all those things. So it's very convenient to use, I would say, Jeremy Harmer, Jim Scrivener. You search these two names and you will get a couple of excellent books. Each of them have written one book each, which are very good, very comprehensive. It covers all aspects of teaching English in a communicative way in the classroom. Here is a note by Professor Nasser. He says his observation is that I think so change our manner of thinking from linear thinking into matrix thinking in order to boost new knowledge of English meanings in the near future. So that's an observation. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lal, for such a wonderful session. Actually, we all enjoyed our class. In the sense, for example, like now you are focusing on the notion that now, like man is important, right? Like you are looking at things from a humanistic perspective. It is not the machine, but the man is important. First of all, as teachers, we should equip our students with enough language skills so that, like, these are the things that these are extra. Okay, so they can explore upon them, they can use them, but inside the classroom, you should inculcate them with the basic language skills. So that is the focus. Anyway, thank you, sir. So once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for accepting our invitation. So it was such a wonderful, like, informative session. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for such a